Hello, my name's Rich. I'm the creator of Medieval History Buff. I blog, I tweet, and I produce videos on YouTube. So today I'm going to start a type of podcast, and this is episode 1. I've decided this episode is going to be about my 12 favourite kings or queens of England. So that includes everybody from the Saxons onwards. So ordinarily you might expect it to be post-conquest for some reason, because a lot of historians seem to think that English history starts with the Battle of Hastings, and it just doesn't. There is a lot of fantastic characters before William the Conqueror invaded, and so that list is going to reflect that to a certain degree. So to start with, at number 12, I've got Elizabeth I. Ordinarily, you might expect Elizabeth I to be higher up, but I just think that there are rulers that have had a greater impact on this country's history or left a more enduring legacy, and that will be slightly controversial with people, I think, but that is my own opinion. At number 11, I've got Edward IV. I think as a military leader, he was fantastic, but as a king, he was flawed. He lacked a ruthlessness. The Wars of the Roses could have and probably should have been ended a lot sooner if he had removed Henry VI. He wouldn't have been deposed when he was if he had done so. And he ultimately, as well, because of his love of eating, he died prematurely in 1483, and he left his sons vulnerable. If he had lived a bit longer, there would have been no princes in the Tower story. And so I couldn't put Edward IV higher up, even though I do quite like him. At number 10, I've got Henry II. A bit like Edward IV, he kind of shoots himself in the foot a bit. His dealings with Becket were largely his own fault. His rebellion that he had to deal with from his sons was largely his own fault. He alienated Eleanor of Aquitaine with his mistresses. So a lot of his problems were self-inflicted. His reign should have been a lot more serene, almost, than it actually was, and if he'd managed it better. But ultimately, Henry II did leave the Plantagenet dynasty, which ruled over England for 300 years. So you can't be massively critical of him in that regard. At number 9, I've got William the Conqueror. William has left a legacy that is can be seen almost anywhere in the country, actually. I myself live quite local to 3 Norman castles, so I can see it. You can see his legacy literally almost every day. His castle building was absolutely phenomenal. He led this country with an iron grip. His administration skills were fantastic, but his harrying of the North was one of the biggest atrocities of the Middle Ages in the West, and I don't think you can overlook that. I know people don't like looking at these things with modern eyes and judging it through a modern perspective, but it was still a shocking act, and it's one that really does count against him. At number 8, I have Henry I. Henry I is an often overlooked king, I would say. His law-giving was mentioned in the Magna Carta, so to have laws that are still being mentioned 80 years after your own death says something for how you've ruled that country, and Henry I has to be given a lot of credit for that, and he's a king that deserves a bit more respect and possibly a bit more limelight as well. At number 7, we've got Edward III. Edward III is probably one of the more famous kings of the Middle Ages. His wars in France were are widely known. His military successes at Crécy and Poitiers are two of the greatest achievements in English history, but the last 10 years of his life were plagued by ill health, and his reign started to go downhill a little bit, and there were consequences felt from some of his decisions and some of his taxes into the next reign of Richard II, which would have consequences. So I don't think you can put him any higher than where I have done it, 7th, even though he's still a fantastic, fantastic king. Number 6, Edward I, one of my favourite kings. Strong leader, strong ruler. His castle building, again, phenomenal, particularly in Wales. He's got a mystique about him because he's one of those rare kings that went on crusade, and that really does, it just fascinates me that somebody that has led that widespread a career, that you go from being on crusade to ruling the Kingdom of England and subjugating the Scots and the Welsh. I think he's just a fascinating king. Brutal at times, yes, like most kings could be in that particular time, but one of the strongest kings we've ever had. At number 5, Richard I. His accomplishments on the Third Crusade are one of a kind, and really are kind of standalone in English history. Probably not the best King of England in terms of actually ruling it, because he was hardly ever here, and his own capture on his way back from the Crusade and eventual ransom led to huge financial problems. But I'll use that word mystique again, and there is a mystique around around Richard I. His military campaigns are phenomenal, and what he did against Saladin are just a remarkable achievement. At number 4, Henry V. He virtually single-handedly brought a European superpower, France, to its knees in less than a decade. If he had lived a bit longer and become King of France, it would have been the greatest accomplishment in English medieval history. At 3, 2, and 1, we've got 3 Saxon kings. Edward the Elder, Athelstan, Alfred the Great, in that order. Without these 3 kings, you would not see England as the country it is today. And it could very well be actually a Danish country, and the culture could be completely different. And it's just a remarkable thing that these 3 men in particular just get so overlooked, particularly Edward the Elder. Alfred the Great, yeah, sure, he will get some attention, but the other 2 are massively, massively overlooked. They are critically important in the history of this country.